season. Tonight, we have a treat. We get to hear from Dr. Peter Spychalla on ritual and reality. It's entitled Ritual and Reality, Constituting Ourselves Through Everyday Symbolic Actions. I've been looking forward to this talk for at least a couple of months, and so it's finally here. And I know, as with, this is always the case with Dr. Spychalla, is it will be jam-packed with useful information. Once again, if you're just joining us now, there is a link posted in the chat box to your right that is an outline that Dr. Spychalla will be referencing throughout tonight's session. This is a seminar format, so you are more than welcome to ask your questions via the chat box, and we will have time at the end to discuss those. One final announcement, and then I'll open us in prayer. We're having the second day of the book sale this coming Saturday from 9 to 3 at Cornerstone Fellowship in Urbana, 1101 East Colorado. Tons of great books at ridiculously low prices. So please, please come out and avail yourself of that opportunity. So let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we pause this evening to thank you for the gift of your Son, our Lord Jesus Christ. We thank you for the opportunity that we have to think critically, Christianly about reality and about the rituals that are important in our everyday lives. I ask that you would bless our time together. May it bring glory to you. May it enlighten our hearts and our minds. And may we always remember you are the creator and sustainer of all that is real. We ask that you would bless this time this evening and watch over us all. It's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, Dr. Spychalla.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Daly, and welcome all the friends out there that I can't really see or know who you are, but thank you for being bold enough to join for a lecture that had a title, Ritual and Reality, Constituting Ourselves Through Everyday Symbolic Actions. It's a little hard to know what that exactly means. I hope by the end, you'll have a better idea. So tonight, we're going to present a model or a set of lenses or principles for interpreting symbolic ritual action. Now, these principles, they'll apply to any given action, sometimes more, sometimes less. It depends on the specific action that we have in view. In tonight's lecture, it's a study in liturgical theology. Many of the rituals that persons in the Christian faith enter into, depending on their specific tradition, show up in the context of worship or some kind of form of devotion. So liturgical theology is what we're studying tonight. And tonight's talk is going to move from the abstract to the practical. Now, I ask you to hang in there in the first, let's say 20, 30 minutes. It's going to be very abstract, and you're going to be begging or asking, saying, please make it concrete. Give me examples. Well, the examples come in the second half of the talk. So you have to hang in there in faith that we're going to make it more understandable and more practical. So I acknowledge the first part is a bit abstract and theoretical, but we have to get some concepts and some terminology kind of up on some shelves, and then we'll eventually start to use the pieces. So hang in there. Don't give up. And the big picture out of the whole talk, I would invite us to perhaps pay a little more attention to ritual in our religious settings, but even what I call everyday rituals. There's sometimes ways we act and interact with others that have some characteristics of ritual behavior and involve the idea of symbol that we'll speak of tonight. And maybe notice a little bit more in the weeks and months ahead, ritual in everyday lives and our liturgical lives. And also, my hope from the talk is perhaps some of us who come from backgrounds where maybe we're a little allergic to ritual or simply it's not on our radar screen as much, perhaps we'll have a little more charity and theological hospitality for those that are a little more open and maybe partake of ritual in some way. So I invite you, learn, just put a few ideas, principles in your pocket and consider using them as you go forward into a world that involves ritual. So buckle up now. Here we go with the first part that's a bit abstract, and we're going to roll. So but hang in there with me. An early Christian hymn affirms of Jesus. It says in Colossians, he is the image of the invisible God. In him, all things in heaven and on earth were created. In him, all things hold together. This word, this phrase, hold together, etymologically is stand with one another. Jesus Christ sustains all things in relationship with one another as part of a coherent, meaningful whole. And again, of Jesus, the author of the book of Hebrews says, he is the reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of his very being, and he sustains all things by his powerful word. These two inspired authors, what they have in view is not the Enlightenment thinker's mere material conception of existence, but rather a reality that's understood holistically in all of its relationships, material and otherwise, involving ontology and teleology. That means being and purpose, intention. All things standing together in respective relationship, cohering and mutually participating within a meaningful whole. The creation, we call it the cosmos. Jesus, the archetypal incarnate image of God, he actively constitutes and participates in relations with all of reality, originally and continually by his word. We will argue tonight that all other human beings in their creaturely manner as incarnate image of God are likewise actively constituting and participating in mutually relating reality by word and symbolic action, ritual action. We offer the viewpoint that such distinctively human action is part of what it is to function as God's image in the world. This lecture explores characterizations of symbol and rite advanced by Louis-Marie Chauvet. And the notes share that he's a Roman Catholic continental professor of a sacramental theology. But there's things we can learn about ritual that will help us even with everyday ritual and not merely liturgical ritual. Our lecture tonight, we will explore Chauvet's characterizations. Then we are going to apply his understanding of symbol and rite in analyzing a common everyday secular ritual, namely a greeting ritual, everyday greeting ritual. We will argue that people actively constitute reality, culture, meaningful social relationships, and that we participate in that reality through symbolic ritual actions. Like the creator, whose image and likeness they bear, people themselves are finite creators and sustainers of relational cultural worlds of meaning in which we participate by the word of symbolic ritual action. Our first part now is we're going to take a look at a characterization of the idea of symbol. And this is a special meaning of symbol that Louis-Marie Chauvet puts forth. And I note that it's a special meaning, so you don't immediately just relate it to your kind of the default colloquial understanding of symbol. In colloquial usage, symbol and sign are largely used interchangeably to mean an indicator or a pointer to something else. Perhaps relative to sign, symbol may suggest a deeper and more complex meaning is being conveyed. Nonetheless, at a popular level, the terms are used of conveyance of information. Chauvet, with dependence on Edmond Ortegu, presents a distinctive concept of symbol over against sign, and the difference is critical for his analysis of symbol and ritual. Every human communication and human action functions to some degree with elements of sign and elements of symbol, as we're going to define here. Any specific human action or communication may be freighted more heavily to the sign aspect or to the symbol aspect. Careful analysis will enable us to tease out symbolic dimensions and signifying dimensions. A sign points to something of which it, strictly speaking, is not a part of, nor does it bring into being. It conveys information. A sign is saying something about something. A sign is informational, signifying, rather than constitutive and participatory. A sign reminds, it brings to mind, it leads to something other than itself. However, a sign qua sign does not bring about a state of affairs. It does not itself participate in the given state of affairs of which it is signifying. I told you this is going to be kind of theoretical at the start, so hang in there, hang in there. For Chauvet, symbol is altogether different. Symbol participates in a reality that the symbol itself, in part, constitutes and brings into being. Daily life constantly plunges us into a world of symbolic markers, which enable us to situate ourselves as subjects within a culturally organized, socially organized world. And by the way, I'll pause here to say, it would be very helpful for you if you're looking at the notes that are pasted in the chat. So if you've joined after the start and you haven't clicked on the chat yet, please click on the little chat in your Zoom. A window will come up, and Kay from time to time is reposting a link to notes for the talk. The notes are comprised of initial 4 pages, rather simple, very direct, the key points that I'm driving toward. And then it's also supplemented with a very detailed 12-page paper form of this lecture, where all references and all the gory details are in that very small font additional paper that's attached. But please be looking at the notes, that will help. So back to symbol and sign here. Now with symbol, there's an idea that we situate ourselves in the world in a certain way. We situate ourselves, constitute ourselves, recognize ourselves as such and such in the world, as taking our place, as having a certain identity and certain roles and certain relations within a larger social reality that we ourselves contribute to bringing into being by our symbolic action. This kind of idea is critical for understanding how symbol and sign differ according to the model put forth by Chauvet. And later in the talk, we'll make this very clear with concrete, one or more concrete examples. Chauvet identifies 4 interdependent, mutually defining traits that characterize how human communication functions as a symbol. There's an element of components fitting together with the reality that's represented. Crystallization, recognition or identification of persons in certain roles. And lastly, there's the idea of submission to the communal other. These aspects will be surveyed now in theoretical terms, then in the later part of the lecture, they'll be illustrated by examples. Fitting together, it's our first principle or concept related to symbol, symbolic actual and ritual action that has a symbolic element. The symbol fits together with a larger reality of which it is part. It does not merely signify that larger reality, but itself is part of the reality. What characterizes a symbol is not its material value in quantity or quality, but its relation with the whole to which it belongs. And again, the performance of a symbol, that is, if it's an action that performs something, the performance of a symbol is linked not to the value of its content as such, but to its relation with the whole reality to which it is fits together with. The symbol functions as it does because of the nature of the larger reality of which it participates and the specific relation it has to the whole. That's a concept of fitted together, which we'll unpack concretely in an example later. Next is crystallization. The symbolic element crystallizes in itself the whole of the world to which it belongs. As a matter of a representational function, the symbol precipitates, distills the whole in itself. The symbolic element represents the whole of the world to which it belongs. It carries it in itself. That is why it is what it represents. The function of the symbol is to represent the real, to place it at a distance in order to present it, to make it present under a new mode. A symbol presents, or shall we say it represents in miniature the reality of which it is part. It is not comparison. It's not that the symbol is like the larger reality. And it's not merely a conveyance of information that the symbol signifies the larger reality. Rather, it is the larger reality itself mediated, presented in human communication or human action. Thus, symbol is utterly real. Symbol does not merely point to, indicate, signify, or convey information about the presence of a given reality. Rather, the symbol itself mediates the presence of the reality. It participates in the reality. Sign qua sign points to presence, indicates presence of some reality, but symbol qua symbol, it mediates presence. It participates in the presence of some reality. Symbol is real presence. It's real participation. So that was our second somewhat abstract component that we're putting it up on the shelf, and we'll take these down off the shelf a little, in a little bit. The third is recognition. This gets a little more concrete, perhaps. A symbol assigns a place, a role, an identity, an ontology, a telos, a purpose to persons. It does not merely designate these, doesn't really convey information or knowledge as a sign would. Rather, persons actually take their place, constitute themselves socially, situate themselves as certain kinds of participants in relationship with others within a larger reality. In symbol, whether verbal symbol, acted symbol, the joining of the elements causes the recognition or the identification of persons as partners, as participants in the reality. Such is without doubt one of the major functions of symbol. It allows persons to situate themselves as subjects within the worlds of these other subjects, with the meaning we've previously given to world in terms of a social world, a set of relationships where we're interrelated with one another. While sign conveys knowledge of an object, a symbol actively constitutes relationships, primarily with other subjects, but secondarily even with objects in light of the relationships with other subjects. And it affirms a world of meaning within which to understand and interpret relationships one with another. Recognition, identification of people as having certain roles, certain identity, certain purpose. That was our third abstract element. Now our fourth, there's an idea of the submission to the communal other with the use of symbol. Symbol is a creator of community, a vehicle of establishing relationship. It's a contract among subjects. Symbolic identification is possible only inasmuch as the subjects are under the agency of the other, which we have previously designated as that which binds subjects among themselves, could be language, it could be a tradition, it could be ancestors, it could be law, it could be God for believers, it could be Jesus or Muhammad for Christians or Muslims, or it could be an ideology, let's say Marxism, for instance, and so on. And by the way, there I'm taking a larger quote. I haven't introduced all the quotes with the quotation marks, but if you look at the detailed paper form of this, you'll see those elements quoted and referenced. A shared unity, a unity, a community comes to be because individuals take their place in relation to others. They submit themselves to a common understanding with identities, roles, and ontology. Ontology means who we are. Who are you? A telos, a purpose, and to other subjects in upholding and participating in this together constructed world of meaning. In effect, by their word, I have to use the air quotes here, word expressed with words or implied by action, they are culture makers. The symbol is a mediator of identity only by being a creator of community. And we'll see this played out when we get to our concrete example. Thank you for hanging in there. The essential thread woven through the four independent mutually defining traits given by Chauvet is that human communication or action functioning as a symbol is constitutive and participatory action. This is the heart of symbol. A symbol constitutes and in part brings into being the community and the world of meaning in which it participates, which includes identities, roles, ontology, telos, expressed tersely. A symbol involves action, intention, community, submission. On this understanding, sign and symbol are not on the same level. They are ruled by two different principles. Sign conveys information, but symbol, it constitutes relations and participates in the reality that it brings into being. That was our first kind of set of abstract elements. Next, we present the characterization of ritual given by Chauvet, which is thoroughly dependent on his theory of symbol that we just presented. Then we conclude with a detailed analysis of a familiar secular ritual to illustrate all of these concepts that we're abstractly putting up on the shelf. So now in your outline, you should be where it says part two. Part two, the characterization of rite. We might say, well, what is a ritual? What is a rite? How should we think about this? Well, human ritual behavior can be understood according to formal, functional, or meaning-focused definitions. Formal definitions, they highlight behavioral distinctives in rites, such as perhaps pre-patterned, prescribed, invariant sequences of formal acts, stereotyped and frequently repetitive and rigid. So there might be certain words or certain actions done, but it's prescribed in a very somewhat bounded, predetermined manner. A formal definition would focus on those characteristics. Functional definitions that deal with ritual, they attend to the social purposes that are accomplished by ritual action. The question they ask is what is done, what is accomplished socially, culturally by performing a ritual or engaging in certain kind of ritual actions. A third kind of definition of ritual, it considers meaning. Meaning-focused definitions considered what's being communicated in a specific rite, whether by words or action. A ritual in its verbal and non-verbal aspects conveys meaning. So there's these different aspects of ritual: form, meaning, and its functional, what it accomplishes functionally within culture. Chauvet, as he considers ritual, he puts forth some principles that draw on all three dimensions that we just laid out. So his analysis of liturgical ritual partakes of all three types of definition. For him, ritual is a species of human symbolic action. Therefore, his understanding of ritual undergirds his analysis of ritual. Though Chauvet is primarily interested in liturgical rites within a worship context, let's say, we will attempt to express his analysis in general terms so that it can be applied to ritual actions of all kinds, secular rituals as well as sacred rituals. Chauvet stresses that a ritual is operative. It's an activity, it's a work. It accomplishes something socially. Drawing on his analysis of symbol, Chauvet states, liturgical action, or we could say ritual action, belongs to the symbolic, not the technical order. It aims at establishing communication between participants and God, and as a consequence, among themselves. We broaden Chauvet's principle to assert that human ritual in all of its forms, whether secular or sacred, it's operative. Ritual constitutes something socially. It constitutes certain relationships, certain meaning, certain identity, certain ontology, certain purpose. Ritual is a language of action and event, as well as of words. The language has a grammar which can be analyzed. Chauvet presents 5 laws of ritual language: how rituals work, how ritual action and words constitute social relations and participation within them. So we're going to look at 4 elements of his grammar, 4 ways of looking at rituals, some of the characteristics of ritual. The first that Chauvet puts forth is that ritual primarily deals with action. And his principle is do rather than tell. Do what you mean rather than verbosely explain what you mean. The first liturgical law, according to Chauvet, concerns the way of proceeding. Do not say what you are doing, but do what you are saying. Ritual is embodied. Ritual is action. It accomplishes something with the body, using the body via postures, gestures, motions, and placing oneself spatially. Ritual involves interaction with the environment. There can be objects, architecture, artifacts, and other people. The sensory dimensions are manifold. It involves sight, hearing, taste, touch, and smell. A ritual is operative, by which we mean it's an action that accomplishes something. It performs something, and therefore, within the shared social culture in which it's performed, it does not need explanation. A ritual is not verbose. It is not accompanied by explanation or interpretation. While there can be words, and often there are words, those tend towards sparseness. This principle emphasizes action, doing, performing, rather than explanation. And by the way, I see it's going on in the chat, but if you've not joined the chat, if you're a participant, be sure to do so, because eventually a link will show up there for you to get the handout, the notes, which will greatly help you in this talk to see kind of the main points that I'm driving at along the way. So now we're considering a second characteristic of ritual: sparseness, discreteness, reserve. Ritual action involves the participant in a larger reality via modest, sparse, reserved, small portion of the whole reality. Only a little of that reality is needed to invoke and make present the wider reality. Chauvet draws on his conception of the symbolic to assert that in a certain sense, a liturgical action, or we could say ritual action, or some element within it, is not, in one sense, it's not real, in that the whole of the reality is set at a distance, at a remove, and it enables participation in that reality. So in one sense, it's not real, but in another sense, it's very real, because it still partakes of that reality and presents that reality. He writes of the little water of Christian baptism, or the little bread in Christian Eucharist celebration. And this is quoting him, he says, in this, the symbol shows that it is not real, or rather that it's real and not real at the same time. It is not, since it only represents the larger reality. It is, since it really represents it. That is, it makes it present by a few fragments. Again, quoting Chauvet, because it represents it, the symbol places it at a distance. The whole reality is being participated in. It is not overtly expressible in its entirety, in its fullness, in the symbol itself. Therefore, the symbol involves sparseness, reserve, restraint, littleness, and a discreteness. And that will suffice to represent the whole and enable participation in the whole. Whether temporally, experientially, or even eschatologically. And we'll see this with the concrete example that I give. Sparseness is an invitation for a participant to continue in all the ways appropriate beyond the ritual, to constitute and live into the wider reality in which she participates through the ritual. That's a second characteristic or element of ritual at a theoretical, somewhat abstract level. So we're almost done with all the abstracts. So thank you for hanging in there, and we'll get to the concrete. Two more abstract elements. Third is an idea of symbolic disconnection, a breaking away from ordinary language and ordinary actions. Ritual actions and words break away from the ordinary patterns of action and speech. They are marked off, separated, and changed in some manner so that they function symbolically. Verbal components may be highly stylized or involve particular idioms, such that they are not ordinary speech. There's an establishing of a ritual scene that is separate from the scene of ordinary life, a symbolic separation from daily existence. Delineation of rituality, it can be seen on the basis sometimes of time. Now is the time for the ritual to begin. Or perhaps space sets the scene. Here the ritual occurs. Or perhaps there's objects. These objects are reserved for the ritual. Or maybe there's certain gestures used in the ritual. These actions, these words signal that the ritual is beginning. Or there's some verbal distinctiveness. Perhaps certain verbal idioms are reserved for a specific ritual. Whatever means is used, there's a different order, a symbolic ritual order that's established, that is distinct from the ordinary order of daily life, hence a ritual scene. For a ritual to maintain its symbolic function, the symbolic separation from ordinary life, that's ordinary speech, ordinary action, it must be neither too great or too small. If the symbolic action is very large, the ritual action becomes desymbolized, for it no longer mediates or represents any larger world of meaning to the ritual actor, so that she may participate in this world. It's like, what's going on? Don't even recognize what those motions or words even mean. It's too removed from the larger world. If the symbolic break is too small or completely or lost completely, again, the ritual action becomes desymbolized, for the words and the actions are simply trivialized. They no longer refer to a larger world of meaning in which the ritual actor is invited to participate. No longer is there another world represented by the ritual actor. While we stressed earlier that symbolic action, meaning participatory and constitutive action, does not collapse into sign, which by which we meant only conveying knowledge, it is still the case that there is meaningful, intelligible connection between ritual action and the world of meaning that it's representing. So there still is a large signification component, conveying of information that has to be neither too little nor too great. If the symbolic break is too large or too small, then intelligible connection is lost. By these extremes, the ritual is desymbolized. It's either rendered unintelligible, thus no participation, or having loss of the greater reality. The whole world of meaning becomes detached. There's nothing to participate in for the ritual actor if the remove is too far. All ritual action creates a symbolic disconnection, which places the ritual actor into a non-ordinary, non-utilitarian, non-quotidian world scene or stage. Within this scene, words and actions are symbolic. Ritual actors use their bodies, they use their words symbolically to establish and participate in relationships with others, with a shared communal world of understanding, which has identities, roles, ontology, purpose, and meaning. Symbolic disconnection enables ontic connection to a world of meaning beyond the ritual scene. Basically, there's a real connection. Ritual representation is true present, it is true participation. There is real presence of a world of meaning to the ritual actor. There is real participation of the actor in the world of meaning. Number 4, our last highly theoretical, abstract concept, getting it up on the shelf, and then we move to pragmatics. When rituals, there's programmed, repeatable words and actions. Perhaps this is the most familiar one coming into the talk. Ritual action and ritual language is programmed. It cannot be created spontaneously. It's received by the actor from a tradition, a shared social history, a shared world of meaning, a shared culture. As noted above, from a formal perspective, rites involve behaviors and words that are pre-patterned, prescribed in variant sequence of formal acts, stereotyped and frequently repetitive and rigid. Rites are performed every time in an identical way. There's a certain sequence, certain gestures, there's the same idioms. Granted, this principle of conservation, it's not absolute. There can be adaptation within bounds to a given ritual context, and rituals do experience some development over time. However, there is a recognizable invariant core in ritual actions and words. There remains constant in enacting. This remains constant in enacting of what has been received from a tradition. The repeatable, programmed form of a ritual has the salutary effect of enabling the ritual actor to participate in the world of meaning presented through the ritual without overly taxing the cognitive faculties of the actor. The actor doesn't have to think about the ritual itself or its words, but can think and act through the ritual. And I pause here, this is very key. Thinking and acting through a ritual to accomplish a certain purpose, to engage with the reality in view, rather than being preoccupied with all the details of the ritual. That's hence why rituals, when they become programmed and familiar, then we can use them as tools, you might say, to interact with the reality that's in view. The actor does not attend to the mechanics of the ritual as such because they are familiar, programmed, and internalized. The ritual forms themselves are transparent. In a certain sense, so the actor can give full attention to participation in the reality being presented through the ritual. Chauvet writes, it is one of the positive effects of ritual programming to allow participants to be carried by this programming. That is, not to be constrained all the time to actively carry or support the right by participation at a level of consciousness and intelligence. He's saying we don't have to spend all our mental energy thinking about the ritual. We use the ritual to connect with and participate in the world of meaning beyond the ritual. And now you get a quote from C.S. Lewis. Now you'll understand something. Because everyone understands C.S. Lewis. Listen to what he says about the salutary element of ritual within a worship service. Some pre-programmed elements that we become very familiar with. Notice how he puts it. C.S. Lewis, reflecting a performative operative approach to liturgical ritual like that of Chauvet, he writes approvingly of churchgoers long steeped in familiar ritual, attentively participating in a relationship with God. Quoting Lewis now, this is in Letters to Malcolm, chiefly on prayer. They go to use the service, or if you prefer, to enact it. Every service is a structure of acts and words through which we receive a sacrament, or repent, or supplicate, or adore. And it enables us to do these things best, if you like, it works best, when through long familiarity, we don't have to think about it. As long as you notice and you have to count, and you have to count the steps, you are not yet dancing, but only learning to dance. A good shoe is a shoe you do not notice. Good reading becomes possible when you do not consciously think about eyes or light or print or spelling. A perfect church service would be one we were almost unaware of. Our attention would have been on God. So I'm going to repeat that last sentence. Very critical that this lies behind the whole idea of a kind of a positive vision of ritual and symbol that we're inviting consideration of. A perfect church service. So again, think the various rituals and elements pre-structured. A perfect church service would have been one we were almost unaware of. Our attention would have been on God. That's the idea behind symbol, ritual in this way that Chauvet is advocating. We participate through ritual to interact with a reality, such as God or such as truth and so on, relationships with others through rituals, and we're not preoccupied thinking about the ritual. That's not on the top of our mind. Item 5, I guess I said 4 earlier, so we have 5 here. A ritual also assigns social positions. A ritual assigns identities and social positions. A ritual, it's not analogical, giving more or less of a certain specification, but it is indexical, discrete, in that a ritual exactly specifies who and where in a ritual social arrangement an individual is relative to other individuals. Exact relations are specified. Exact identities are constituted. Social positions are fixed. Persons are marked determinately as certain persons relative to all other persons through the use of symbolic ritual. Differentiation of identity and relation is made in ritual action. A ritual actor by ritual actions and words constitutes herself as a certain someone in a certain relationships to all others, understood with reference to the communal world of meaning represented in the ritual. By bodily action and words, a ritual makes the following socially necessary function possible: to know who does what and in what capacity. And number 2, it allows persons to place themselves in particular ways as participants within a shared social world of meaning. It allows them to be implicated and responsible to fulfilling certain roles within this reality. We're almost there to the practical example. We're almost. Hang in there. In summary, Ritual is a species of symbolic action formally characterized by behavioral distinctives such as pre-patterned, prescribed, and variant sequences of formal acts, stereotyped and frequently repetitive and rigid. Human ritual in all of its forms, secular and sacred is operative. It's an activity, a work that constitutes something socially. It constitutes relationships, meaning, identity, ontology, purpose. And it's an active participation in the reality so constituted. Chauvet observed 5 laws of ritual language, a grammar of how rituals worked. He labeled them action, do rather than tell. Sweetness and reserve. Number 3, a symbolic disconnection. Ritual breaks away from the ordinary language and ordinary action. Number 4, ritual, it involves programmed repeatable words and actions. And lastly, ritual assigns social positions. Ta-da! We made it through all the theoretical elements put up on the shelf, and now we need to apply them in a concrete practical example. We examine in depth now an everyday, ordinary secular ritual using the model of symbol and rite provided by Chauvet. It's a thoroughly secular example. I selected that on purpose lest one conclude that Chauvet's insights apply only to liturgical rituals and only to structured elements and words and sequences that might occur in a worship service. In the quotidian realm of everyday ordinary life, people constitute and participate in social reality, in culture, in a world of meaning through symbolic ritual actions. Nearly every morning at sunrise, I rise and take a brisk 30-minute walk in my residential neighborhood. Although it's early, almost invariably, I encounter several individuals walking about the street or on the sidewalk. Many of them are being towed by a canine companion. Some are carrying their canine, and even worse, some have the canine in a stroller, which I've not figured that out. They're that ritual out, but anyway, I observe it. Frequently, when I encounter these individuals, I perform a ritual. I perform a symbolic social action. It involves a gesture and a word, though there's some variation, in which I participate with the other party in a shared world of meaning. I not only share the social world, but I partially create this world by my ritual action. I'm a creature, just a creature. I'm also a creator, though, a constitutor of culture, one who forms and upholds social realities, and I live into them, all by tiny gestures and sparse words. By now, the reader might have guessed that the ritual I have in view is a morning greeting. I offer a morning greeting to those that I encounter. This ritual comes in 2 species of outward form. If I and the other individual pass within a comfortable personal speaking distance, let's say several feet to perhaps 30 feet, then the ritual primarily takes a verbal form. If the distance between us is greater, then the ritual greeting primarily takes a gesture form. Sometimes both forms are combined. Let's examine the external forms further. In both cases, the ritual greeting begins with a bodily posture, particularly a facing of the eyes, focusing attention on the other individual. It's not merely enough to focus on the other individual, but the goal is that the other individual detect this focus. It's communicated by bodily posture and perceives my focus as attending to them. The length of the focus can be a fraction of a second to perhaps several seconds. If the other party participates in the ritual as well, there will be a brief moment of mutual attention in which both ritual actors attend to one another, signaled by bodily posture. There's eyes and face directed toward one another, and both perceive that the other is attending. There's a recognition of mutual attention. Next, the ritual progresses in one of 2 ways based on distance. If the relative distance is large, a hand gesture is used. In the main, the gesture begins with the palm downward toward the body, and the hand is lifted so that there is a relaxed opening of the palm. I demonstrate for those who've not seen this kind of thing. Relaxed opening of the palm toward one another, and an extending of the fingers. There's innumerable variation. There can be, let's say, a raising of 2 or 3 fingers, or a waving of the hand. a small amount of side to side called the wave gesture by those scholars of theological anthropology. The wave gesture may last several seconds. And by the way, you can look up the wave gesture in Wikipedia. There's even an entry on the whole thing. So very fascinating. It's typically performed within a bodily frame bounded by the knees at the bottom, a gently extended arm on either side, and a gently extended arm upward. The gesture becomes strange and non-standard if the motion is overly hurried, or the appendages are overly extended, or held overly tight to the body. In a context of closer proximity, likely that no gesture will be used. Rather, a simple word or phrase may be uttered. Morning, good morning. At the middle range of proximity, both the gesture and the verbalization may occur. Good morning. The greeting ritual is primarily an action, primarily something done with the body. Its meaning and what it accomplishes socially is not expounded during the ritual. I pause there. You see, we're not explaining it. We live within the shared cultural world, and there's an understanding, so that I don't have to explain why I moved my hand a certain way and opened it and wiggled it and so on. None of that is stated. We just do the action, and it's understood. There's a gentle move of a hand at a distance and the ritual is complete. In the nonverbal case, the creation of and participation in social reality has occurred by embodied action without any explanation or words. The meaning and effect of the ritual action is understood by both parties. The greeting is sparse, it's discreet, and it's reserved in its design. This picks up on one of the principles of Chauvet's. We had just outlined some of the principles of kind of prescribed structured elements of ritual. Now we look at this idea of sparseness, reserve. The other party in a greeting ritual is not embraced in a big bear hug. The other is not sat down for a several-hour deep conversation about life and the state of their health, their soul, their relationships, and their engagements in the world. No, there's a littleness, a modesty, a sparseness, a restraint in word and action in the greeting ritual. There's a littleness of action and speech. It's enough. It's enough to invoke the larger world of social meaning and relationship. There is symbolic action from ordinary, or there's a symbolic disconnection from ordinary speech and ordinary action when this ritual occurs. And this is that idea of ritual scene that Chauvet discussed. Entrance into the ritual scene is facilitated by an event. Basically, the initial physical meeting of two parties. This is the correct and proper social context for the ritual. The ritual is out of place in other social contexts or when this precipitating event has not occurred. For example, let's say I was together with an individual in close proximity for 20 minutes, then it's just a little weird to suddenly do the greeting ritual. That's not the correct time or situation. So there's a whenness for the ritual to occur, the ritual scene to begin. There's a temporal aspect to the setting of the ritual scene. Two parties are just initiating contact. The ritual is performed now upon this event. Delaying even a few seconds renders the ritual socially inappropriate, socially out of proper social context. There is a physical spatial aspect to the setting of the ritual scene. Two parties are in physical proximity, visually perceivable by one another. Any other physical spatial arrangement renders the ritual not relevant. Needless to say, there must be another party or the ritual becomes nonsensical. So if I'm just walking along, and there's no other human and making this motion and so on, the ritual, it does not create any shared social context, so it lacks its meaning. The ritual greeting is also marked off from ordinary action and ordinary speech by a blend of elements of temporality, space, context, the physical relational encounter with the other human being, gestures, this wave motion, and the verbal distinctive of just simply saying morning, good morning. That is a distinctive kind of utterance that isn't part of our ordinary speech. It's ritual verbalization. The symbolic separation from the ordinary, it's neither too great nor too small for the ritual to function intelligibly and symbolically. This picks up on the principle from Chauvet to say what we're conveying in terms of the informational element of the ritual. It has to be connected meaningfully to a larger reality and not be, there must not be too large of a gap. And here I'll propose and explain related to the greeting ritual. The physical gesture of the wave corresponds to and may be suggestive of a positive, supportive physical motion toward other humans. Physically upholding another, embracing, helping, physically touching, all of which are positive social good for the human species. But of course, it's only hinted at. It's only minimally suggested with the physical motion. The words morning or good morning may be understood as shortened forms of wishing well to another. I wish you good morning. Typically, the tone and the manner which is uttered also conveys an optimism, a positivity, and an affirmation. We shall argue shortly that more is going on in the greeting gesture or words than merely wishing the other well. In some, gestures and words function in an intelligible manner for participants. The ritualized morning greeting, it's programmed and repeatable. It has been received from a social tradition. Indeed, some variation is allowed on various secondary aspects, but there's a recognizable core of stereotyped formal acts and words, pre-patterned, prescribed, and invariant. The same gesture and words is performed in an identical way nearly every time. As such, the participant does not need to focus on the bodily actions or think long to determine an appropriate utterance for the occasion. Instinctually, without conscious thought about the gesture and the words, the actor acts through the ritual to truly greet another party. The repeatable programmed form has enabled the establishment of social relation and a true participation in them. The entire focus during the ritual action is on actually greeting the other person rather than the mechanics and the content of the ritual words and ritual motions. Rather, the focus is entirely on the other person, the real greeting, the real social engagement with the other. Now we come to the central point that we wish to emphasize with the morning greeting ritual. Based on the analysis of symbol and ritual provided by Chauvet, the greeting ritual I enact during my morning walk in my neighborhood, it performs, it's operative. It accomplishes something socially, actually a number of things socially. The greeting ritual assigns identity and social positions. The morning greeting in my neighborhood context implicitly means I acknowledge you as my neighbor, and I take my place in relation to you as your neighbor. The ritual specifies socially the who and the where. I mark myself as your neighbor and you as my neighbor. I am not merely declaring these identities informationally. I'm not just conveying some information, but I'm actually establishing, constituting myself socially as neighbor to you. I'm marking out these social identities and relative relational positions in the morning greeting ritual. Primarily, this constitution of reality pertains to me, the performer of the ritual. I step into, embrace, and participate in the identity and the role of being a neighbor. Yet secondarily, with respect to the other, with respect to you, I'm identifying or naming or regarding them as my neighbor, as having a certain place and role within the shared web of social arrangements. Regarding them as such, it affects, and to some degree, it even effects the shared social framework, the culture that we inhabit together, the world of meaning that involves what it is to be neighbor, and it influences the other party as well to take their place as my neighbor. The ritual establishes not just the social who and where, but the large social what. A large social what is implied as well. If I constitute myself as neighbor to the other, I am implicated. And I am responsible in certain ways to fulfill appropriate to the relationship what it is to be a neighbor to them. The identity and ontology of being neighbor is integrally tied with the ethics of living as a neighbor and the telos, the purpose of fostering neighborly good. In the morning ritual, this ritual greeting, I'm asserting and affirming a whole world of meaning. I'm upholding, advancing, and sustaining the shared world of meaning. In Chauvet's words, I am submitting to the communal other. I am partnering with the others in a larger reality of a shared culture of neighboring. It is appropriate at this point to revisit briefly the concept of sparseness, discreteness, and reserve, together with the concept of symbolic separation. The greeting ritual itself is little, it's minimal, it has few or no words. However, though reserved in The gesture and the words are sincere. They're true and present or represent the reality of a neighborly relation. I do wish the other a good morning, and I do affirm, support, and help and touch the other as the gesture suggests. The gesture mediates real presence and real participation in being a neighbor. Yet there's so much more about being a neighbor than merely the ritual itself. Being a neighbor at all times and in all ways appropriate to the relationship is placed at a distance from the ritual itself. The ritual cannot express it all. It cannot capture it all in its fullness. The sparseness of the greeting ritual, a symbol, though a real presence and a real participation, points to greater fullness on multiple levels. Interpretively, the whole meaning, the ontology, and the purpose of what it is to be a neighbor exceeds the ritual. Ethically, all that's required to be a good neighbor exceeds the ritual. It's hard to pronounce. Eschatologically, meaning temporally looking forward, there's an entire future of living as a neighbor that the actor is called to. This fulfillment temporally exceeds what is accomplished in the ritual itself. I may say good morning, implying I'm neighbor, but now that means something for our future together as I would interact with this person and see them and perhaps help them in a time of need. And looking backward memorially, neither can the ritual express the full prior history of being neighbor to this other individual. There's people I see day after day after day, and we've been greeting each other for months and months and months, and we have a history. So when I say good morning, I'm invoking and recalling memorially all that history. The ritual doesn't explicitly do it, but it is participating in that shared history memorial that we have together. There's a vast surfeit of reality represented in the symbol, but not captured and expressed in the specific symbol of the morning greeting. The symbol, in its reserve and its sparseness, it points to and mediates engagement with a larger world of meaning of being neighbor. So now let's wrap some things up. Marshalling Sauvé's 4 interdependent, mutually defining traits that characterize how human communication functions as a symbol, we note that the morning greeting ritual, it fits together with and participates in a larger reality. And as a matter of representational function, it crystallizes in itself the whole. It presents a larger reality in miniature. It recognizes and identifies persons as social partners with certain specified social places and roles. Lastly, the morning greeting, it is a submission to the communal other. A common understanding is upheld and participated in. In sum, the morning greeting ritual, though small, it's a big deal. By it, I am actively constituting myself and participating in a mutual socially constructed reality by word and symbolic action. Who would have thought that so much is at stake in a tiny motion of a hand or the sparsest of words? Now we conclude kind of the formal talk, and then we'll reflect on some of the questions. Sauvé employs a model of symbol and ritual that provides a thick description of human ritual action. It probes the larger social meaning and import. His central contention that we affirm is that human ritual action accomplishes something socially. People constitute reality, meaning culture, social arrangements, and we participate in that reality in part through symbolic ritual action. This can be viewed against the larger theological frame of what it is to be human in the world. Central to what God accomplished and created the world was identifying, establishing relations among, and assigning functions to elements of the creation, the ordered whole, the cosmos. People created in the image of God continue this function. While conceptions, definitions, and characterizations of the imago Dei, the image of God, are varied and are contested among scholars, we nonetheless put forth that as God's image in the world, people continue God's creational project of identifying, establishing relations among, and assigning function to elements in the world. Al Walters puts it this way. He said, concerning God resting and mankind continuing forth, this is not the end of the development of creation. Although God has withdrawn from the work of creation, he has put an image of himself on the earth with a mandate to continue. The earth had been completely unformed and empty. In the 6-day process of the development, God formed it and filled it, but not completely. People must now carry on the work of development. By being fruitful, they must fill it even more. By subduing it, they must form it even more. Mankind, as God's representatives on earth, carry on where God left off. But this is now to be a human development of the earth. The human race will fill the earth with its own kind, and it will form the earth for its own kind. From now on, the development of the civilized earth will be societal and cultural in nature. In a single word, the task ahead is civilization. Ends the quote. Another way of expressing this is that human beings are culture makers. Andy Crouch, writing at a popular level in a book about a decade ago called Culture Making, Recovering Our Creative Calling, states, those who are made in his image will also be creators and rulers. They will have a unique capacity to create, perhaps not to call something into existence out of nothing, but to reshape what exists into something genuinely new. Reflecting on the culture-making activity of humans as God's image bearers in the world, Crouch notes, culture is relational, and culture is what we make of the world. We take these insights as providing support for our view that people like the Creator, whose image and likeness they bear, are themselves finite creators and sustainers of relational cultural worlds of meaning in which we participate through symbolic ritual action. This distinctively human action is part of what it means to function as God's image in the world. People, in their creaturely manner as the incarnate image of God, are actively constituting, upholding, and participating in a mutually relating social reality or culture by their word, which involves symbolic ritual action. Last two sentences now. In this symbolic ritual action, however feebly and incompletely now, we, people, we point to and reflect, indeed, even have a true participation in the incarnate one whose image we will be fully transformed into the eschaton, Jesus, the archetypal incarnate image of God who actively constitutes, upholds, and participates in the relationships with all of reality, originally and continually by his word. The end. And now we'll take kind of questions and discussions, which I'll let you get your ears get a breather, and I can take a small drink now after full court press.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay, Todd, you pull which questions. I have not been able to read the chat. You talk.
Yeah,
and we can unpack a few other examples kind of quickly with less verboseness. Which ones you want to dig into that have?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a question from a participant here. Something I was wondering about as well. Can you address how rituals or rites serve us in, or how they contribute to spiritual formation? So this person is thinking about the relationship between formation practices and expressive practices in worship. In other words, rituals and worship can form what we believe, but they also allow us to express those beliefs, you know, through particular bodily actions or creeds. That's a great question. So,
well, let me just jump in.
You're the presenter. Go right ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. Many of us in a kind of post-Enlightenment world and certain forms of Protestant Christianity, we have pursued a kind of disembodied spirituality. We have like left the body behind. So in most simplistic terms, if you look at the scriptures, you'll see that we're embodied individuals. We're very holistic. And I think there's a good movement of recovery to some degree in some circles to say, look, we are whole bodies and we're formed by what we do. The direction of formation isn't that we study theology and we think certain correct theological thoughts and then it somehow shapes our whole life correctly and it moves into our body. It actually can work the other way around. We can start doing the right things with our bodies. We can start loving others with embodied actions. We can start worshiping God with embodied actions. And the formation works the other way. We start doing the right things, or we start doing healthy, laudable engagements with the world, with God. And over time, that shapes our heart, it shapes our volition, it shapes our thinking. So we actually live into the good that we're doing in bodily ways. So I think if you are a person who pursues spiritual formation, whether pragmatically or academically or so on, you really need to think holistically of the shaping that happens through the body first. And we need to think of that in terms of as injury, malformation. We can be hurt and injured via our bodies, or even mistreat our bodies through bad habits, bad food, bad sleeping, all these kinds of things. And it actually affects us adversely in terms of the immaterial dimensions of spirituality. And the other thing I'll say, if you take a fresh look at all the neuroscience work the last 25 years, we'll see there's such a far more deep interplay between what we might say, what's detectable bodily, and what we perceive of in terms of our thoughts and our feelings and so on. And so you look at all that and you say, we are deeply mysterious creatures that are embodied souls. And we need to properly respect that in terms of Christian spiritual formation. And unfortunately, some of us, a certain kind of heritage has been very intellectualized, and it's a great mistake. We need to look holistically, and I think we can look to wider streams of Christian history through the 2000 years and learn a few things about total shaping of persons in devotion, in what the Lord wants us to be in terms of shaped into the image of Christ. The body and bodily actions, privately and communally, are key, are just critical. So if you're in a setting where you can give more thought to it and shape others to value that more, kudos to you, and I promote that. So Todd, jump in. I don't know.
Great.
I served, or toss another question.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I'm reminded of the comment made by James K.A. Smith at up at Calvin. He's been critical of how evangelicals often worship and turn the anthropology behind a lot of church services treats us, and this is his line, treats us all as brains on a stick, which is
that's just big mistake. That's false to who we are. That is not true Imago Dei. We need to recover a robust, holistic Imago Dei, and then that's what's being shaped into the image of Christ.
Yeah, and I love the emphasis
Christian
on doing first. Sorry, I interrupt. Yeah, I love this emphasis on. I grew up in a maybe somewhat of a fundamentalist context, and I remember being told, during some of the hymns, well, you ought not to sing them if you don't really believe them deep in your heart. And I thought that again presupposes sometimes thinking overdoing. And so I think what you might say to that is, well, maybe we sing these songs so that we might come to believe them. But maybe that's not what you're saying.
Sure.
But
and on analogy to that, with the young child, we might say, say thank you to your grandma, or say sorry to your sister. And they may be doing some external actions and verbalizations that we hoping they're going to grow into over time, live into. So it's because we don't none of us are ever perfectly sincere or fully live into any external action that we do.
Yeah.
That's not reason enough to stop the good external action. Let's continue the external action, and let's pray to God, oh Lord, keep filling me, keep transforming me, that I would more fully live into, so that any external action I do would be done with sincerity, in a true heart, and good motives, and a real seeking of God and real loving of neighbor. So let's keep doing the good bodily actions, but let's live into it by the grace of the Spirit.
Amen. Okay, enough. Let me get to another question, because we're almost out of time here. This person has asked, are there dangers to ritualization of actions? For instance, if rituals assign, I just lost what I was reading. So I'm sorry. If rituals assign social position, can ritual deliberately or inadvertently be used for exclusion? And if it comes programmed, could that allow people? Is there a danger in ritual of going through the motions without being actively engaged? So there's two questions there. I'll let you address those.
Yes and yes. There, I answered them. Yes and yes. Life is dangerous. To live, this project of living a wild, godly life in all that God calls us to is fraught with danger on the left and the right. And the answer is never to give up the good thing. The answer is to try to keep, if we're people of the Reformation, as we're reforming, and we're continuing to reform. So
Yeah.
always take a look at any ritual actions in any setting and keep always asking very intelligent questions and saying, is this wise? Is this good? Is this done right? Are persons being properly respected and treated and shaped according to everything, scripturally and out of our religious heritage that's healthy and so on. So yes, it's very dangerous to live a human life. So,
Yeah.
but that's what we're called to do. And it's going to take all the resources we have of mind and heart and wisdom and truth and tradition, and scripture and Holy Spirit to do a good, healthy job with it. We can go wrong quickly in every front. And that's why we need to be really humble and never self-satisfied, and keep assessing and begging the Spirit to freshly work. So
thank you. This is a comment. I think this is, and you're welcome to reply here.
Okay.
Different cultures focus more or less on symbol and ritual. So, for instance, in a Taiwanese drama, symbolic movement and gestures carry most of the meaning, so that a Taiwanese acted Bible story was well understood with minimal words. They grow up with this kind of drama. It's very symbolic on a bare stage. And so this person says, I intuit that their religion is encapsulated in the actions they perform for it, and not necessarily verbalized beliefs. So for them, not doing these rituals of belonging that are a cultural glue is seen actually as a betrayal of the family, not as a personal faith decision. For example, ancestor worship or honoring. So that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any comments to that.
That's too complex for me right on the fly to both enter into with intelligence and nuance. That's a very nuanced, subtle thing that's put forth there. There's no way I could say anything constructive or positive or that's fair just right on the fly. I'd have to sit down and ponder it. So excellent observation, though, the idea of meaning carried in bodily actions. And again, there's forms of Christianity that some of us are in, that where we seek to deny, we minimize that. And my rhetorical question to us as Christians would be something like this. You look at the Jesus of the gospel, you look at what we're called to in the Sermon on the Mount, you look what we're called to, and I wonder if the Christianity we're called to has more orthopraxy, embodied actions, praxy, practice, and we've accentuated orthodoxy, the teaching cognitive side, and gone light on the orthopraxy. And so there's something possibly out of whack in our Christianity relative to the way Scripture puts it forth. That's a very robust both and. It's a very
yeah, that's great. And it's 8:16, so I'm going to ask this briefly, and then we'll respect people's time. What's the relationship between a symbol and a sacrament?
That's too large of a question, but I'll say a couple things. One is, first, realize symbol is put forth by Chauvet with a unique meaning here. And what he's going to try to do is draw on the participatory element, because the tradition he works out of, a Roman Catholic tradition, has a participatory emphasis as it understands the sacraments. One of the reasons that can't be straightaway answered is if depending which religious stream within Christianity you look at, there's going to be a different conception of what's going on with the sacraments. And some aren't even going to use the word sacrament. They would say ordinance.
Yes.
And I would say the ordinance they would probably tend more toward the signifying aspects and less toward the participatory connecting in with the wider world of meaning. So there's going to be kind of a scale. So that question can be answered. I can't answer that holistically for Christianity. That's where, frankly, every different faith group has a different nuanced answer. Even in Reformed tradition, very
absolutely.
sliced and diced. So
No, that's
all
a
I can
great
say
answer.
generally.
That's a great answer for a difficult question. Wow.
I wish
Well,
I want to say this. I wish we got I could have managed my time better, but I was going to talk about some of the ritual actions at a Illini sports event. You know, ILLINI.
yes.
That's
Yeah.
very special, non-ordinary speech.
Yeah.
And
No, I
I
think
was
that'd be
informed
fascinating.
it was better to wear the dark blue shirt.
Yeah.
I had a very nice bright red shirt that I could have worn very recently to a Illini, Wisconsin Badgers volleyball, women's volleyball. But given where we were sitting and given what we were going to be doing,
That would have
the
been.
dark blue seemed to be more important part of
Yes. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ritual behavior. So
Yeah.
anyway, we could have gone into depth on that. Of course, we could have talked about worship services, all the things that we do. But the thing I do want to maintain, the key takeaway, we do something, we constitute ourselves. We're not
Yeah.
just saying stuff with creeds and confessions. We're
Yeah.
actually taking our place. I am a disciple. I am one who
Yes.
believes.
Good.
I am one who's confessing. So that's the key takeaway.
Thank you, Peter. My brain is full, but this has been very good. And we may have to do a part 2 where we talk about tailgating and maybe anyway.
Right.
Thank
The
you all
ritual
for
of
your
tailgating.
time. Thank you, Dr. Spychalla. You always deliver. Thanks to all our participants, panelists. Again, this will at some point sooner rather than later be uploaded if you would like to watch this lecture. Feel free to avail yourself of the notes again that he's made available for us. And we will see you sometime in the future for another installment of Taste of Seminary. In the meantime, enjoy your fall and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you all. Thank you.
God bless everybody.
Good night.
Good night.